everybody. Here we are again. For those that don't know me, I'm Pip. I'm an HR people person and I support small and medium businesses to solve people problems, increase employee engagement and retention. This is the next in my series of talking to people that I collaborate with, and today's subject is recruitment. So hopefully there'll be some interesting stuff in here for you. I'm really pleased to say that today I'm joined by Kris from Revision Recruitment, who I've worked with for a number of years in my employed life and freelance life. So Kris, do you want to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your business and the areas that you specialise in?
Absolutely, thanks Pip, thanks for inviting me along. I 15 years in recruitment now, so my business is it's my business, 4.5 years working for myself after sort of few positions within the high street and then the sort of specialist market. I cover most of East Anglia into the Midlands, and it's mainly engineering, manufacturing and supply chain focused recruitment. So everything from potentially product in to product out, the design, the purchasing of said products, the components, the product marketing, maybe the sales engineering aspect. And I've really enjoyed, working in that sector now 15 years. I kind of feel like I've got a bit too much knowledge of certain things that I shouldn't have in terms of how things made, but it kind of makes it interesting for me.
Yeah, and from working with you that, got a bit echo there. I know from working with you that you will also look at other roles as well. I know in my past life you helped us recruit a health and safety role, so yeah, you're very much a recruiter where I think you have your area of specialism, but actually what's nice is you can ring you and say, oh, I've got this, would it be something that you could help me recruit? And what I like is you're honest enough to either say, yes, I'll have a go, or no, do you know what, actually, that's not my area of specialism. You're better to go somewhere else. And I think that's for me, that's what's great, is that honesty about what you feel you can and can't have a bash at, really.
I think rule of thumb for me is if it's finance, IT, HR, or I would guess some sort of medical functions and that kind of really niche business functions, I probably wouldn't look at that. But if it's in the manufacturing sphere or it's in the engineering sphere or it's something hands-on, then likelihood is I've either recruited for it or would know what you're looking for, which is...
Now, there's such a range of roles as well, isn't it? So that was helpful for me when we kind of worked more closely together to be able to say, look, I've got this, what do you think? Because I don't always know enough about the roles myself. No. Good, okay. So I guess if we're honest, some of the feedback that I've certainly had from working in businesses and with business owners, and probably you get all the time, is that recruitment is seen as an expensive activity. So I guess it would be helpful if you just talk about the benefits from your perspective of working with you. What do people get if they work with you?
Well, unfortunately, I can't dispel that rumour that we're not expensive. Now, the range of expensiveness that you would expect can be very, very different. Because I'm a business owner with my own small company, then I can afford to be fairly flexible and creative on that sort of thing. Bigger companies have set margins, set fees. So let's face it, what we do is add value to a process. I feel we provide a service, and very few services come without a cost. So, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't charge. I would love to be that kind of philanthropist and say I do it for the fun, but I'm not. I have a business to run, as we all do, but because I'm a smaller business, I understand the costs and the implications of not hiring an individual into that business that could potentially either help you grow your business, fill a need, or ultimately, fulfill something in that department that needs doing. So where I think I would add potential value is, let's talk about, the work we've done in the past. Certainly in organisations that maybe haven't recruited for a role for a while. They might not have recruited for, say, a design engineer or something for 15 years. They've got a retiree. They've never gone out to market. Don't know what the market's like. Last time they recruited, they stuck an advert in the paper and had 50 applications. It's just not like that now. So knowing who else is your competitor, that's something I can offer you. Talent selection in terms of looking at the skill levels what you're anticipating. Will you get that from your local market? The salary, something that I can help with, because ultimately the candidates I talk to, I tell you what they're worth. The time scales as well, because if you're a smaller business, a business owner, and you have for example, you have a finite amount of time to deliver a project. If you need a high level of skill in that position quickly, you're going to find it difficult to advertise, to draw that individual in. You're going to find it difficult to shortlist potentially, because it's a very, very buoyant market in terms of...
Yeah, and I think for me, the value, certainly from my experience of working with recruitment agencies is it's probably those two things around speed of turnaround, because expensive is up for interpretation, isn't it? Actually, if you need a resource and you need it quickly, that's where working with someone like you can be helpful, because you do cut down the time. You haven't got to wait for job advert to be out there for 2 weeks before you shortlist, or once you've briefed you, CVs will start to come in fairly quickly. So that's a real kind of area where I think particularly technology businesses, startups, fast moving businesses, where sometimes your priorities change, or you might need resource quite quickly, and also in hard to recruit areas and specialisms. I know for me, working in Cambridge, you mentioned mechanical design engineers, they are particularly tough to recruit, and I don't think we would have stood a chance of recruiting that kind of role directly by using our own website and some jobs boards or looking on LinkedIn or whatever. And I think the beauty of using someone like you is you've got those relationships set up already, you know who to contact, and you kind of know their level of skill and competency, which is often with a technical role is the important part. So for me, I guess those are the two things that I would pull out, is that sort of finding difficult to recruit skills, but also the speed of turnaround. I think that can be the real benefit for businesses. You take that capital away from them,
Yeah, there's also the passive candidate market, because not everybody's looking until they know they're looking, or till they're approached. Part of what we do as recruiters is networking. I've got time to sit on LinkedIn, I've got time to talk to candidates and clients and do far more networking than maybe a business or an HR person might have. So I can talk to 50 candidates a day if I have the time, and I'm building a kind of a talent pool, a kind of an understanding of what's coming up available. I might find a candidate who's happy in their role, but for the right position would be interested, and that's information that only I have, that you would not access from a job board or from placing an advert. And the last bit is your brand protection. This is something that I've experienced in the last couple of months with a particular client of mine. The sheer volume of applications that they have, because of the levels of role they recruit for, they don't have time to go back. They have no dedicated recruitment function. So they will have 50 applications for maybe 2 roles, of which they will select 3 or 4 for interview. Now, there'll be a disclaimer on their advert: if you're not contacted, you're not successful. But unfortunately, in these days of social media, Indeed have feedback forms, CV Library do, all these places have places you can leave feedback. His clients getting absolutely panned for not returning calls to candidates. Now, do all recruiters return emails and calls? Probably not. But if you have an interview with somebody, or there's an application where somebody rings up and genuinely wants to talk to a line manager, a recruiter can jump on that. They can protect your brand. They can engage that candidate in a way that leaves them feeling like they've been handled correctly. Maybe it's a small part of what we do, but sometimes it just turns that candidate into somebody you might hire in 6 months' time, rather than somebody who will never.
And also, there's a piece there about sort of keeping candidates warm. If let's say you're interviewing a number of people and that takes a few weeks to get through as of priorities, actually a job that you can be doing in the background is keeping all of those candidates interested and warm while we're kind of working through that, and then so they don't start to look elsewhere and we lose them. So for me, that's also that partnership is quite useful, because we're doing the front end stuff of interviewing people and getting through that process, but you're actually helping with the juggling in the background, which is quite useful. No, I absolutely agree with that as well. And I think a recruiter that sort of understands the business and how important the brand is really important. So I've always wanted to work with recruiters that have taken the time to understand the culture and the business and the brand and what we're trying to achieve, and the sorts of people that would fit into the culture. That's important for me, because bottom line, you want to feel special. We're your customer, and we don't just want 50 CVs that have come off a database. We want someone who's kind of thought about it and thought, oh, actually this person would really fit in that organisation. I think that's the real benefit for me of, if you get it right with a recruiter, that's the benefit it can bring. So we know it's a time-consuming activity to kind of manage yourself. Obviously, in terms of how we would collaborate, I would often be involved in the sort of front-end stuff of scoping the role, potentially setting the salary, or talking to you and saying, we've got this role, we haven't recruited it for a while, what's the market doing? Getting some advice on that. And then obviously there would be a point that we kind of hand it over to you to say, off you go, can you generate some CVs? And then once the CVs come back in, I would usually pick it back up with the business owner or manager and either help them shortlist or just make sure the process keeps moving, and either interview with them or again just facilitate that process of setting interviews up, kind of working with you in the background, if you like. And I think from my experience, that's always worked really well. I think if you get somebody that's responsive, and I've always been keen to hand feedback back,
absolutely,
pass on, and I think if you get that working really well, it can really work for the business. So whilst it can be seen as expensive, you can kind of see there's quite a lot probably going on that you don't necessarily see. What you see is a CV being delivered to you, but actually there's quite a lot of work that leads up to that, and there's a lot of work of interaction between, if there's an HR person there, liaising with that agency person to brief them, make sure they've got the detail, probably sift CVs as they come in to go, yeah, that looks quite good, I'll put that in the pot, or I don't think that was quite there, I'm not even going to put that one forward. So what, obviously I've talked about sort of how we've worked, but what are the benefits for you of working with HR people in that way?
I think the biggest benefit is communication. The benefit that if an HR person is strong on communication, now that I'm sure they all are, but in terms of somebody, for you, for example, Pip, you and I used to talk at length about the applications, the candidates, why they applied, what they would bring, not just in terms of skills, because ultimately, if it's an I'm going to keep using engineers as an example, but there is a large part of that recruitment process where the line manager wants someone that can do a job technically correct, with the right skill levels, with the right safety, kind of understanding, and can deliver against the expectations of a job spec. The HR person, for them to have that skill set, but they've also got to adhere to the company values, the culture.
Yeah, we're not looking so much at, and that's what's nice actually, is we are looking at the cultural fit a lot.
And also as well, you're forward planning in your head. You think, is that person a future business leader? Is that person going to bring other things to the department? And working with the right type of HR person, I'm sure they're all, I keep saying the right type, but in particular with working with you and others I've worked with, being able to say to a client like yourself, this person's got X or Y, they can tick the boxes technically, but they're going to bring something else to the team that isn't on their CV. Now, in the nicest possible way, you and I have spoken to about candidates where maybe they've been 60% match on a CV, they've been short of a couple of skills here or there, and it might never have got through a sifting process of 100 CVs. But when I've had the conversation with a candidate and we've talked about them, we've had them in. You've trusted my judgment. It took a while. We've had the candidate in, and then you've run me on, actually, yeah, I can see what you're talking about. And it kind of, that's the value to me of dealing with HR. There is this kind of take what they can do away from the process, actually understand what they are. And I think that is the real difference in working with HR for me.
Yeah, and I think that's, for me, when my job's people, so I'm whilst I'm interested in their technical skills, sometimes I'm not an engineer, I don't understand what people need to have, that's the manager's scope, if you like, but for me, I'm always thinking about how will somebody fit, are they going to be a long-term team member? That's ultimately what we're trying to achieve, isn't it? And people, like you say, that can grow in the business. So that's nice of you to say, because that's very much, for me, I think you have to focus that time on recruitment to kind of get it right. And sometimes CVs don't always tell you everything about a person. Sometimes you need to meet them, and that's why when it's been that 60%, it's kind of like, you need to meet them to figure out if there's a bit more there. Not everybody sells themselves brilliantly on a bit of paper. So that's the other thing for me, is so much of recruitment is meeting the person and going, well, actually, I think there's probably something there we could grow or whatever. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Cool. So are you seeing any trends for business owners in terms of recruitment since we've been in the pandemic? I know the recruitment market's a bit crazy at the moment for lots of reasons, but is there any sort of trends or changes that you've seen that are interesting?
Well, we both worked together in the Cambridge market now for some time, and the Cambridge market has always been difficult but highly skilled. It's very contractually driven. There's lots of temporary work, not the lower end of the market, but fitters and panel wirers, and people that can come in and do a project driven job at an R&D business. So very quickly at the start of this year and throughout last year, the contract market was very busy. And then for whatever reason, the start of this year, the permanent market went absolutely mad on sort of high level hires. So I'm experiencing lots of, quite senior level positions. And if you look on the job boards and the notifications and LinkedIn, businesses are making big hires. They are looking to bounce back hard in lots of sectors, and not all sectors, but in lots of sectors, people are hiring, individuals that will change or enhance or deliver on the direction of the business going forward, which is great. But the trouble is, and you can speak to 100 recruiters, those candidates are few and far between. So when you get an active candidate, they're on the market for a week and they're gone. So what I'm experiencing is, if I speak to a candidate, like I spoke to one the other day who was exceptionally good, they had 7 or 8 interviews lined up, and they were getting phone calls while I was talking to them. They've been on the market half an hour. And you just think to yourself, I'm aware, of course I'm aware, that clients have lots of things to do. And more important than recruitment. Recruitment is 1% of the client's day normally, whereas my time is 100% normally. So I can focus on that. But getting that message into clients, having a conversation like this with you, we would have done this, 2 years ago. I'd have rung you and said, Pip, this person's absolutely moving fast. We'd have moved heaven and earth to get them in. That to me is a trend. The really, really highly skilled candidates, they're just...
Yeah, and I guess that's because business owners are starting to, the longer it goes on, the longer we've got furlough, the longer we're in this pandemic. I guess business owners are starting to make some decisions about the longer term. Whereas
absolutely.
It was kind of like, we're just going to deal with kind of tomorrow, very short-term planning. I think I'm certainly seeing that from an HR perspective as well, is people are actually making some decisions about what they want the structure and their teams to look like longer term, areas that they're going to focus on longer term, and that probably then filters through to what skills do we need, what people do we need, because I think, and also I guess now we're starting to see a point at which we might start to come out of this as well.
Absolutely.
So we're starting to want to be ready, which is great. That's a really positive thing, that people are getting prepared now to be ready rather than waiting until the last minute. But I guess, there's a lot of candidates on the market, so I think it's probably just juggling that. I've seen high levels of applicants for jobs, and it links back to your point about feedback. I do feel for the HR people on the other end of that process. If you've got 300 applicants for a job, giving everybody feedback and giving everybody an outcome is very different. I appreciate for the candidate it's very important, but actually for the poor HR person who's sitting there trying to manage that process, if you're recruiting 5 roles, that's a lot to do. And I understand that it's not always, and actually even when it wasn't as it is now, that wasn't always possible. If we got 30 or 40 applicants for a job, that was kind of unmanageable. So with hundreds of applicants, it's probably multiplied. Okay, cool. Well, listen, thanks for coming on chatting. I'm conscious of not making this too long, but how can people find you? Where can they find you?
Everywhere. I'll haunt your dreams. I'll haunt your dreams. No, I like most of the normal channels. I mean, look, you've invited me on today to help me with almost pushing my entry into the world of social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be more active. I'm trying to raise the brand. High hopes for the business going forward in terms of growth, but Instagram, Facebook, I'm on Twitter, but it's mainly job feed. I try to engage with something that I think people want to see, and a lot of candidates follow me rather than clients, but ultimately hit me up on these social medias, and
I'll tag you when I post this.
Thank you.
I'll put all your handles if people want to go and find you and follow you. That's advisor that you
email me good, website,
social media activity if I do that, because if people follow you, they're going to want to see content. So that's I will put all of that, and I'll put your web address and your email if people kind of.
I'll work on a few TikTok dances then. It's fine.
That'd be lovely. But from my experience, from my perspective, these collaborations are about people that I've either met on my networking travels that I think I could work with or have worked with, or people that I have worked with in real life back in the days when we could see people in person, and that I would recommend. And you are one of the suppliers that I would recommend. You did some good work for those businesses, and we hired some really good people who I'm really pleased to say are still there. And that for me is the sort of indication of the difference, I guess, between working with some other recruiters or trying to recruit yourself. Building those relationships is important. So
it's almost like those businesses that you work for had really, really good engagement policies for their staff. It's almost like somebody put something in place to keep them in their positions and make them happy. I don't know.
I mean, it always comes back to culture for me. And
exactly.
I think we talked a lot about was understanding, there were particular kind of person that could work in that culture, as
absolutely,
as is every organisation, it has its own culture. But understanding that, and you coming in and having a tour around the factory and understanding what the culture was, and me talking to you about, this is the manager, this is the kind of thing they look for. I think getting under the skin of that, rather than, like you said, just the technical skills tick sheet, understanding the kind of person that would work in that organisation, that's what gives you retention and longevity. So
it's not just work, it's thriving as well, isn't it? It's somebody who thrives in that, because we always talked about, in your previous role, a particular type of person, inverted commas, that fit. And one of those things was this ability to almost challenge and push, because the business wanted to do certain things in terms, and you wanted candidates that were going to push, going forward. And I think what we found was, in the end, we found a really rich vein of form in finding people that bought into that process of improvement, not just for now, but they wanted to help the company go forward. And all companies want to do that. And that comes down to partly the right candidates being put forward, but also as well identifying that candidate's abilities going forward, which is the collaboration between what you do and what I do, which is kind of how it worked, I think.
No, dream team. That's what it's all about. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining me today. Really good to chat to you and find out more and let you tell everybody more about what you do. I will be doing more of these with people, again, across a range of subjects about collaboration over the next few weeks and months. So stay tuned for those. And in the meantime, I hope you're having a great week, and I will see you soon. And I'm sure Kris will see you soon on his social media as well.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.